Welcome to episode 26 of WooWoo for the Skeptic. I'm Kim Polinder, your host and curiosity advocate for the world of metaphysics. Today, we're going a little more in-depth into a topic that has been touched on in past episodes, and that is channeling. My guest is widely known and respected for her channeling work, and as a bonus, she channeled a message for us all in the interview. So if you've been curious about what channeling is, who the beings are who are talking through channelers, or why we should even listen to what the beings have to say, then you'll find today's interview very informative. I hope you find value from this interview by determining what aspects of channeling resonate with you. I'm very honored to be speaking to my guest today, Micheila Sheldan. In the course of her healing process and spiritual awakening, Micheila left behind her role as a marketing consultant and soccer mom to step fully onto her soul's path as an intuitive channel. Micheila's guides have led her to the understanding that her purpose is to help others more clearly define and walk their path and mission, as well as share wisdom and higher guidance to live a healthier, happier life. Micheila offers herself as an intuitive channel so that others may communicate directly with their spirit guides, angels, teachers, and ascended masters. And Micheila is one of the few channelers online that I consistently listen to, as I feel the messages that come through are always of the highest integrity. Micheila, thank you so much for being on the show and welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So why don't you first tell the listener how you took a personal interest in channeling?
Well, I really didn't take a personal interest in channeling. Quite honestly, the channeling took a personal interest in me. Not at all what I expected to do with my life. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even know what channeling was for most of my life until I started doing it and had to understand what was happening to me. I started to make this incredible connection at a time in my life when I was struggling with chronic pain, and I had begun meditating. Not really as a spiritual practice, because at that time in my life, I really wasn't interested in any type of spirituality or spiritual connection, but I was struggling with this chronic pain. And the meditation came so quickly to me. And I fell into very deep, I would say, trance states in my meditations very quickly. And I started to realize I was hearing things, I was connecting to beings, and I just went on this quest to understand what it was I was hearing. And what I came to realize is that I was channeling, and heard very early on that I was here in this life on the planet in this time to be a channel, which I was actually very resistant to because, again, I was very mainstream mom, mainstream world, got a college degree, 4-year college degree, worked in the marketing world for a very long time, stayed at home with 2 kids. You didn't think anything of having a mission in the world or having any connection like this, but it really took me on the journey. And the more I was accepting of it and the more I was questioning of it, the more it grew. And I came to realize that the messages I was receiving truly were beyond me. And I began to share them just with close friends and family members and that sort of thing. And then it grew into where I am today, which is, it's completely changed my life. And it's what I live now. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And were you intuitive as a child at all? Did you have any of these experiences as a kid?
What's interesting is I didn't really have any recollection of them. And I think that a lot of us are like this. We come in with these very expansive gifts, but we arrive into family situations, or we're taught that what we're hearing, seeing, sensing, feeling really isn't the truth. And I did have a very defining moment later in life where I was really just kind of going about my day, doing some household tasks, and was having a 2-way conversation in my head with some being outside of myself. And I paused and just had this incredible flood of memory come back that I did this as a child, that I always had this 2-way conversation going on in my head. And right, we often think that's the imaginary friend. But yeah, I absolutely did do this as a child, but not something I remembered until I started to do it again later as an adult.
Right. Yeah. And I love the fact that you've offered to channel a message for us at the end of this interview. So I'm looking forward to that. Can you explain what channeling is to someone who might be new to spirituality?
Absolutely. So the easy definition of channeling, because truly I believe that we're all channels for spirit guidance, is tapping into energies that are non-physical. So we are all created so uniquely and differently here in this world. And as unique as you are, and the way that you look from someone else is how unique you are as a channel. And you know, some of us, we get that gut feeling about something, or we feel something from somebody, or we can feel shifts in the room. That's being a channel. And all channeling is doing is picking up on a being, an energy outside of yourself, and being able to interpret that energy in some way. When I'm channeling now that, you know, there are various types of channeling, the way that I channel, I'm a trance channel and I'm also a conscious channel. So what that means is I'm picking up on spirit that's present, and there might be a message from that spirit. And that spirit is actually sending that message through me in some way. When I'm in a trance state or a meditative state, which is how I do a lot of my live lectures, I go into a trance meditative state and I allow these beings to flow through me. They're using my body, my hands, my voice to transmit messages, and they're flowing through my consciousness. When I'm a more conscious channel, it really works the same way. It's just I'm picking up on them and I'm translating them as me as opposed to as that being. So a channel is actually allowing an entity, a being, a consciousness to use their physicality to relay a message or a detailed teaching of some kind.
And when you started doing this, did you have any fears of, well, who is this being? Are they for my highest good?
You know, what's interesting too is that when I first did this, I didn't have any fear because I didn't understand it. And it's almost like being blind to something, right? I had such curiosity that I would do a lot of questioning. I was almost, Kim, kind of mad, which is interesting. I was like, you know, I don't know who you people are. I don't know why you're interrupting my day. I want to know who you are. I want to know why this is happening. That was the kind of, you know, response that I had. And I think what that response did for me was it automatically put me in a place of protection because I was so in my power, right? And what I've come to learn is that we're always matching energies or frequencies. We're like a magnet. So whatever we are vibrating as are the energies that are going to attract us. And you can see that sometimes you're having a really bad day and all of a sudden everybody around you is having a bad day, or you run into the crabby grocery store cashier or whatever it might be, right? It just compounds, it compounds, it compounds. And that's the sort of thing that happens here too. When you have a very negative vibration going, or if you're in fear of something, you're more apt to attract or encounter a being or a spirit that is in that same vibration. And I did have some experiences early on connecting at the level of where some of the soul beings, like human incarnate beings that have passed on, reside with, you know, messages I knew weren't things I wanted to hear. And I just, in my complete ignorance to the whole thing, said a very strong no. And that was always enough. And when I said that no, I cut off that connection. Later on, I actually took some channeling courses. After I had been channeling for a very long time, I thought I should probably take some classes in this so I understand what I'm doing, which was, you know, not the best idea, but yet at the same time, it was an interesting process for me. And in those classes, I did learn fear. And a lot of people teach and preach, you know, bubbling in light and using crystals and candles and all these things outside of yourself for protection. And what I've come to believe is that when we feel we need to place protection outside of us, we're already acknowledging something exists that we are vulnerable to. Our perception of our reality is the manifestation of that reality. And so the trick really becomes just maintaining your vibration, being of the highest intention. You know, when I channel, I'm always placing an intention on, you know, the highest beings to step in for the betterment of humanity, right? Or the person that I'm working with. And I can feel it in my body. You know, sometimes the people that I'm working with have lower vibrational attachments or things. And I can tell right away, we need to weed through some of those and we just move on. You know, I think when you're in your power, you don't need to worry so much about protection. You just embody it, right? You just embody it. You live it. And the more you live happy and you live your truth, the more you just are naturally protected. It's like raising your consciousness. The more you raise your consciousness, the happier you're going to be. It's the same thing with protection.
Yeah, and I really love the point that you made about saying no, because I think that's what a lot of people who are maybe new to intuitive messages or things they don't see don't understand that they have dominion like that. So
Exactly. And what I did find too is I did encounter some souls early on that were scary. And I always advise my clients when they have situations like that to question. Because when you start to question things, it almost requires a different type of stance or vibration. You have to be in your power to question something. What I found when I questioned these beings was they actually needed help. A lot of them, they're very desperate because they might be stuck between worlds to get our attention because they want to relay a message to someone here on the earth, or in some way they don't understand where they are and they need assistance. And that's something that I found very early on that took that fear away, because I understand now that when these beings are contacting us, we need to have some compassion, and go in and try to see what we can do to assist them. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that perspective. Now, there are a lot of people online on YouTube who channel, and I don't mean to disparage them because I'm sure they have good intentions. A lot of times, like you mentioned, the messages that come through are low vibration, or at least it feels like that to me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for the listener on warning signs that a message they're listening to may not be for the highest?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, we have so many channels on the planet right now because we have so many people who are at varying levels of speed and vibration and understanding, right? So you as an individual are going to attract the channel that's exactly at the level that you're at, or the messages that are coming through. And again, we have to remember, when we're a channel, our consciousness is intermixing with that, right? So it's undeniable, right? There's a part of you that becomes the message. So that's why it's really important to keep your vibration really high. And you can feel that, right? When you connect with a certain message and you talk about, people that are channeling things that are very negative. For me, if I'm going to receive information like that, and it's not just from a channel, it's really anywhere, I want to walk away feeling better, right? I want to walk away feeling healed. I want to walk away feeling empowered. And that to me is really my rule of thumb for what I pay attention to. And like I said, it goes beyond channeling, because even in my newsfeed on Facebook, right, I've learned to weed out the people, the things that are always harping on the negative, because I know the power of the creator that we are here. But, your body can tell too. Sometimes there are channels that are bringing information through and it just doesn't feel right in your body. Your body picks up on something. It might feel like a headache, or, some tightness in a muscle. And that really is a red flag as well, that your body's telling you this isn't your truth. We're going through such a huge transition here. And I think that so many channels are emerging to bring through various parts of that transition, and not all of them are good news, right? I mean, there are things that I bring through as well that are not things we want to hear about, but we know, right, are happening here on the planet. But the one thing I always notice is the guides, the collectives, the beings that I work with, they'll always, although they present a message that might be difficult to hear, they'll always empower us to understand that it's all within us to heal. And that regardless of what's happening, it's just a timeline we created that we can overcome. And I look for that in my messages as well. So you really have to tune into, if you're attracting that type of message, maybe why you attracted it in the moment. And maybe there was something that you were supposed to take away or learn. And I noticed that too. Sometimes I'm attracted to material and I'm not meant to listen to all of it, but there was just something there that I was meant to take away and understand, and then I close the book on the rest of it. So it becomes trusting your own guidance and really being able to feel into the information. But to me, if anything is fearful, rule of thumb for me is it really isn't something that I want to connect with.
That's great advice, especially about the how do you feel when you walk away from the message, and the point of empowerment, because one of the warning signs that I use for myself is, are they supporting the idea that my power comes from outside of me, like some beings are going to come save me or
right.
or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, anything that takes you away from empowerment is a no for me.
Well, and as a matter of fact, that's a good point because a lot of the collectives that I work with, the very consistent message that I get is they're not here to take it all away. There's so many people out there that say, why are these beings not cleaning up our planet? Why they have the technology? Why are they not assisting us? Well, they truly respect our free will as sovereign beings. And so if they were to step in tomorrow and clean it all up or take it all away, they consider that an infringement on our sovereign, connection to Earth and our soul transition. So they want to support us in ways that we can understand it's all within. But at the same time, although they would love to come in and just take it all away, and they could actually do that, there are so many things that we don't understand that would be affected, right? Lessons that we need to learn, expansion that we're here to experience, right? That would go along with all of that. So yeah, I use that as criteria as well. If somebody's promising that it's all going to be taken away tomorrow, that's not something that resonates with me. And further in this process, I've really become, I don't want to say a skeptic. That's not really the right word, but
well, it's appropriate for the show.
Yeah, right. I've become wary of predictions because from what I understand, okay, let's just back up and say I believe that predictions can be made. There are brilliant mediums, channels out there that can predict things, timelines. And the reason that happens is they see a very strong core that exists that you are so equal to in the moment, because you think of you as a creator with every thought you have, with every emotion that you feel around every thought. You're actually creating a potential timeline, right? So those timelines are infinite. There's just so many of them running, and you're going to match the one that you vibrate most closely with. But your vibration is always changing, right? You're a vibrational being. So it becomes very difficult to say, this is where you're going and this is what you're going to do next with complete accuracy, because you are a free will creator and you get to choose the vibration that you own and what you're matching at any moment. So if that's the case for you in singularity, think of the collective, right? Same thing. And there's a lot of people out there making predictions about war, for example, World War III. Is there a potential timeline that exists for that? Of course there is, because think of how we've created that, right? With everything that's taken place here. But the flip side of that is we've created a lot of good stuff here too. So who's to say what's really going to happen, right? We can tell the way we're vibrating and the potential that we have and what we're moving towards. And that's often what I will get in my channeled messages. They'll look at the human collective as a one and say that, the potential here to change this is actually very high because more people are awakening, more people are raising their consciousness, more people are making different decisions, and those decisions have to have an effect. But I'm very wary of the black and white predictions because I just don't think that they're possible to make with complete accuracy.
Yeah, I agree. To get back to the whole creator energy in all of us, that just is the foundation of being empowered. And I agree. I do not like these predictions because they're picking up on maybe something that happened in a different timeline, different reality, different life.
Absolutely.
So it's not that they're not picking up on something that's not true. But let's talk a little bit about timelines that you mentioned, because that's a lot of what I do in my energy work with clients is clearing beliefs that will release them from 3D timelines or third dimensional timelines to move them more in alignment with fifth dimensional timelines. So when I try to explain that to friends, I get a very big glazed over look in their eyes. So can you describe timelines and how that relates to like the term fifth dimensional, what that all means?
Sure. Well, let's start with dimensions, because people get really hung up on, third dimension, fifth dimension, and exactly what that's going to entail. And really, to make it quite simply, all of the dimensions, and what I believe is there are 12 to 13 dimensions here that exist within the universe, and we're always expanding. So we create dimensions as we expand as a universal consciousness. The 13th dimension is actually forming right now as we speak. But all of those dimensions actually exist right here, right now, in this present moment, in the room that you're in. And that's a hard concept for people to understand. But all dimensions are, to me, it's a set of information, right? So when you're in the third dimension, there's only a certain amount of information that's available to you that you perceive in your reality. And in the third dimension, a lot of that's been very physically based. We've had this very strong propensity to see into our timelines as being very physical. We had a physical job and we made physical money and we had this relationship and, all that stuff was very physical. When we move up in dimensions, what the guides say we're doing is we're actually activating our DNA. So the way they describe it is we have a carbon-based DNA, which is that DNA that we refer to here in physicality. It's the stuff that our medical doctors look at, right? And we have this quote-unquote junk DNA, and we have our lineage, our physical lineage that we have there, diseases, whatever. But we also have a crystalline DNA. And that's our energy body, right? That's our energetic crystalline information. That's our multidimensionality. This is who we are in all of these dimensions. Because think about it this way. You are only tuning into one timeline in any moment. But as an energetic being, you have multiple timelines running consecutively. So as you transcend your experience, your soul has experiences, karmic experiences, whatever they may be, you're illuminating those strands of DNA. So the carbon DNA, the crystal DNA, they come together. And that is new information for you. It's a new perspective. It's the ability to see beyond physicality. So as we move up in dimensions, we're actually losing physicality and gaining more of our non-physical energy and integrating those together. So our extrasensory gifts become more available. We have more communication ability with beings outside of ourselves. We have more access to those timelines. So what are the timelines? We are creators, right? Back to that creator analogy. And what I believe is we have a structure that allows us to create potential timelines. And that's our emotional body combined with our thoughts. A lot of people you're looking at things like law of attraction, and our thoughts create our reality. And I believe our thoughts are very powerful in that creative process. Yet, what do thoughts do? Thoughts create emotions. And those emotions are really the vibratory response that allows us to create potential timelines. So we think, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. There's a lot of fear attached to that thought. The more we think that thought, the more that potential timeline exists that we are going to lose that job. And it's already running. It already exists. And then all we have to do is match that vibration and it manifests. So that's one example of a timeline.
That would also kind of explain the recent election.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we can apply that analogy all over the place. But, yeah, I have some very alternative thoughts about the way our president is elected. And I don't think it has anything to do with physical votes.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, I really feel like we energetically decide that. But, that those candidates also have a record, right? So we have to look at both sides of it. We're creating something here and we get exactly what we created and what we vibrated with in that creative process. So we have timelines that are running. Every time we step into a new situation, we're in a new timeline, right? We go from home to the office. We just jumped timelines. We're in a timeline at home. We're in a timeline in the office. But we also have past, present, and future. We are existing in this moment as all omnipresence. In other words, past, present, and future is right now. Linear time, we're so stuck with linear time here, and that's a concept that's been very difficult for us to bridge out of the third dimension. But truly, we can have these past timelines come up, and they have to, right? Especially some of the tough ones, right? Well, let's take pain, for example. We might have something going on in the physical body, and it's past. It's our history. We've struggled with it in other lives. We brought it with us in this life because we were meant in some way to transmute it for ourselves and for others. And it comes up in us and we get really focused in the physical. Yet at the same time, there's a huge non-physical component of what we're experiencing, right? And that's I think getting into probably some of the work that you're doing is working in those non-physical energies and some of those blocks to help us integrate that physical and non-physical experience, because that's really how we ascend. That's how we move dimensions. right? Is by healing those timelines.
Yeah, and since there are so many timelines in play, I'll just give my personal experience with them where I had this career in IT and then I started a healing practice, energy work practice, and that I knew that my clients for the energy work were on a different timeline. And I don't mean to get hierarchical, but let's just say a higher dimensional timeline.
Right.
And so in order to align myself with that timeline, it took some, belief clearing, some serious belief clearing, and contract clearing. So for people who aren't doing as much energy work as I'm doing, what are some, I guess, things that they can do to recognize, like how to shift themselves? You mentioned, the higher their vibration is, the more their DNA will be activated and give them access to higher dimensional timelines. What else can they do?
That's something that's really prominently happening right now because we have just shifted timelines here collectively. And I see a lot of people struggling because they have this new perspective. They understand that a lot of things they've created here aren't working. They've chosen jobs that weren't equal to their truth or their creativity, right? Things that they truly are here to do. And now they're struggling with that because they're so stuck still in that third dimension. And we really want to dig in. We think, okay, I have to make this jump from IT to healing, but that jump's going to require me to lose a lot of money and there's going to be a lot of stress and then my family's going to suffer and I have all these responsibilities and these bills. And, we create so much in our energy field that is that block. And the guides actually call that density when we do that. And we're like, I can't because of this. I can't because of that. That's density. And all that density does is it prevents us from bringing in and seeing things from a higher perspective. Because oftentimes, very subtle shifts in your energy will allow you to bridge those gaps quicker than what you could have ever perceived. And the guides will often point to what you were saying about raising your consciousness, because the more that we put energetic currency into the things that we know are our truth or that bring us joy or that we're here to do or we want to embellish in some way in our experience, the more those things that don't equal who we are anymore have to shift. And we don't have to worry so much about the responsibilities and the money and how that's all going to come together, because when we raise our vibration, when we start to actually serve ourselves, we find joy, we find peace, we put energy into things that serve us, ourselves and others. We're connecting with that collective energy. In the same way you said, I had to move myself up into a new dimension. Sometimes when we move ourselves up into a new dimension, everything that isn't equaling that dimension has to resolve in the highest and best way possible. And that can be bringing new patterns into your life, right? It can be just throwing some energy into something every day, like meditation or like healing or whatever it is, right, that you love to do. And we have to sometimes take our attention away from those things that are vibrating and lack and put ourselves into a more abundant energy to allow those transitions to take place. And yeah, they're very subtle. The more we catch ourselves, the more we catch that thought process, the more we stop that pattern, because that's what creates all that density. And then we talk about often the higher self, or the guides will talk about the higher self. And what is the higher self? The higher self is a seer of all your timelines. So if that's true, and we need to access that higher self to help us transition, we can't have all that density there. We have to be able to see clearly into what's available for us. And, start creating. Now's a perfect time to do that in the non-physical. Sometimes just sitting in practice and meditation and visualizing where you want to go without those barriers, without those blocks, and the universe supporting you takes you into that, emotional body frequency that you need in order to shift those timelines.
Yeah, I love that advice because, just to pose it out there for the listener, what is creating density in your life? And it might take action steps on their part to draw boundaries with, a challenging relationship with your mother, or to leave an unhealthy dating relationship, or maybe even marriage. So yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, we've put all these barriers up outside of ourselves. And that's what the third dimension was really all about, right? It's just physicality. And we see it so stark. But what's interesting is the more that you transcend and you raise your consciousness, those things, they're so false that we put in our way, those blocks that we create. And that's what really moving dimensions is all about, is seeing yourself as a catalyst for change in others. Because I don't know how many clients I have a week that have relationship responsibilities as their barrier to their own happiness, right? Well, if I do this, I'm going to hurt my kids or affect my kids. Or if I make this decision, my husband's not going to be happy or my family's going to be upset. Well, the fact of the matter is, we've connected with all these people in the third dimension because in some way we were meant to serve them through our own experience. So that responsibility that you feel, if you can shift that into how am I able to serve myself through this experience, through these relationships, that's got to be by serving yourself because they need to see you operating in your truth. That's truly what they came for. And when we have so much fear around that, that's the dichotomy, right? It's like we're so afraid to make the choice because somebody's going to be hurt or upset or we're going to feel responsible. Yet at the same time, if we don't make that choice, we're not honoring those people the way that we should be because we're not upholding our truth.
Yeah. And for me, earlier in my path, we'll call it, I took a look at a lot of the things I was doing in what I would call zombie mode, like some of the TV shows I was watching, what was on my Facebook feed. And I cleaned house and I don't carry any Facebook friends anymore, which did not go over so well with friends. But yeah, I just make sure that my feed is always positive because it's, again, those little hooks, like subtle little things here and there. What is all contributing to the density in your life? Exactly.
Yeah. Your perception is everything. Your perception is everything. So if you've got something that's tainting that perception in some way or is leading it in a direction that isn't in your best interest, it's good to clean house on that. Yeah, like you did.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I do miss some of those shows, but
yeah, well, there's something to be said for a little, mind numbing every now and then, relaxation.
Yes.
But yet at the same time, yeah, it's in moderation. Everything, that's my rule. Everything is good in moderation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So as we conclude this interview, could you talk a little bit about the types of beings that come through? And I know a lot of people hear the term ascended masters. What are those?
Yeah, well, I really did start working with a lot of the ascended masters early on. So what I consider, and everyone perceives these beings a little bit different. And I think that's the beauty of being here and connecting with them, as we all get to perceive them in our own unique way. I perceive the ascended masters as beings who have walked the earth, who have evolved through a very, I don't want to call it difficult, but, many timelines that were challenging and experienced the human condition in certain ways. And they come back as teachers for us to help us walk through this human life at the soul level and transcend. So when I talk about ascended masters, these are typically the archangels. We talk about the Mary Magdalene, the Mary of Ephesius, the Christ consciousness. There are also, the Buddha, I consider an ascended master. There's so many that we can work with. And early on, I brought a lot of them in. I actually had my own, I believe we have our own special guides that are very unique to our energetic relationship to the universe. And very early on, I connected with my own. I had a guide come in named Jacob, who I consider a gatekeeper, which is a very special spirit guide who's here for our awakening and here to help us connect. When I tap into people's energy in session, I often will pull in guides that are here just for them, that are here because they have past life contacts. They've experienced things with them in other lives or other worlds, other dimensions, right? We have so many beings surrounding us in any moment. I also work with a lot of extraterrestrials, and this was very surprising to me because when I first started this channeling journey, I didn't believe in extraterrestrials until I started to channel them. And the universe, there is just so incredibly diverse, and there are so many beings that exist here. And I have incredible connections with the Pleiadians, the Arcturians. I work with sometimes reptilians. These are, of course, benevolent beings, the very loving, higher dimensional beings. I work with the Atlanteans, Lemurians. It's really across the board in my private sessions. But in addition to that, there are a lot of native collectives that come forth. And I work with a group called the Ancients, and they're an ancient group of Mayans who've brought some really beautiful messages through me. I just recently started connecting with a collective of Tahitians that are here giving us more grounded earthly types of messages. So it truly is across the board. I think that as soul beings, we have had so many experiences, and oftentimes in my client sessions, I connect to multidimensional experiences we've had. The guys will talk about who you've been in other dimensions, on star systems, on star lines, on other planets, and how that relates to what you're doing here. It really is all interconnective, and we integrate that as we go forward. We integrate all those parts of ourself, and that's how we ascend as well.
There's all this talk about aliens and contacting us. And
Yeah.
just to put a different perspective on it, you mentioned I'll just call them star beings. Sometimes they're called star seeds, people who are actually here on Earth. But why would they channel messages for you or for us?
Well, I believe that they all are here in some way to assist our Earth transition. And what I find most often is that many of them have already experienced some of the turbulent times that we are going through. And I'll give you one example, a collective such as the Atlanteans. And in ancient Atlantis, there were many transitions that took place. There were wars that took place, right? They went through what we're going through now, which is the integration of the physical and non-physical energy bodies. And they've struggled through that. And they have intimate knowledge of where we are in the moment. And they want to come forward and offer us support and information about how we can walk these transitions with more ease and comfort because they've done it. Right. And in addition to that, I really feel they understand the value of our interconnection as a one. And that's totally what they're striving for. So when we interact with these beings as, in a channeled sense, for example, what I'm doing and what other star seeds are doing here on the Earth, it's not just about the messages that come through. There truly is a vibration that's coming through as well. And it helps us to lift our consciousness. And the more we raise our consciousness, the more we come back together as a one. And that's really one of our biggest problems here on the Earth, is that humanity has been focused in singularity. And we don't see each other as a one collective, the I am in you, you are in me type of energy. And that's really what they are here to bring forward. So support, they have knowledge of what we're going through and they want to help us through that, but also they want us to lift our vibration and our consciousness, and they support us in that way as well.
Absolutely. And what would you say to skeptics who don't believe that your messages are actually coming from these beings, that it's all in your head?
Yeah. Well, I wrestled with that. That was you can imagine going from, a PTA mom to someone who's channeling extraterrestrials, what a journey that was for me. And I was in a lot of fear over that, the people who didn't trust me and didn't believe me. And I put myself out there pretty big. So I, of course, get messages all the time. What I've come to is I'm really not here to change them. And when we're vibrating in an experience, we are going to attract the information that most matches what we need to learn. So I feel like if they've come across my material and there's something that they're criticizing in that material, there's something that they're needing to see within themselves, right, in some way. And, the fact of the matter is we can look at everything that's going on the planet right now energetically and understand that we're all having a different experience, because not one of us could be having the same experience as another. We're that unique. So if you're not resonating with this material, then it's because you're meant to go somewhere else. You're meant to do something else. But I don't feel, and there is right or wrong here in the universe. And I know that's a very controversial statement because, people say, well, there are people out there that are doing things that are wrong. Well, yes, of course, they're making decisions, right, that affect the collective energy. But I'm talking about judgments here. When we look at judgments of, right or wrong, we really can't offer any guidance on that because no one's in my body, right? So this person that's judging me, they're not having the physical sensations that I'm having. They're not having the lucid experience that I'm having. They're receiving it in a way that is different. So I'm not here to change anyone. I'm here to do what I do because I was called to do it, and mostly because it brings me such joy. It's funny, sometimes I have family members who are still not very cool with what I do. And the way I've come to look at that is, well, if you had a choice of sitting behind a desk every day and doing a repetitive type of action to receive a paycheck, or you could connect with extraterrestrial beings and create messages and guidance and wisdom. What a fun ride that would be, right? I mean, and if it actually changed someone's life and made them feel better, wouldn't that be worth it, right? I mean, we read books all the day, that all the time, that are every day, that are fiction, and we have an incredible experience with that. So when it comes down to it, I really just look at the way that my interaction with the world is serving me and serving others, and that's how I judge it. And for me, it's been a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I love that. And your passion definitely comes through. So
thank you.
Well, before we get to the channeled message, I was wondering if I could just ask you a few fun questions to get to know a personal side of you.
Of course.
So what sort of music did you listen to as a teen?
Oh my gosh, everything. Everything. I am one of those music listeners who loves it all. I can go from jazz to hard rock to Middle Eastern to like meditative, and my playlist is so diverse. So I have a wide variety. And I always, as a child, I did kind of gravitate more to R&B. I grew up here in Detroit, so the more soulful,
yeah.
right? Kind of Motown and that sort of thing. That's in my heart. And I think it's, just because where I grew up. So I always had that playing.
Oh, nice.
Predominantly. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then secondly, what do you like to do on your day off?
Oh boy. Well, lately on my day off, I've adopted a new policy of doing absolutely nothing.
Ooh, nice.
So I'm a very busy person in the world, and I take on a lot of projects, and I tend to be, that type of person that takes on a lot. And what I found is I really need a day of nothing. And there's not a lot of people that do that. And it's hard for people like me, or probably like you, who are very driven in the world, to actually do nothing in a day and just be, because you feel like, wow, I should be going out, right? I should get dressed. I should go do something. But it really does replenish my energy. So I enjoy that. Right now, I'm really dedicated to Sundays are a nothing day. That means no family, no, that's just me hanging out and being. But in addition to that, something that a lot of people don't know about me is that I do Middle Eastern dancing.
Oh, wow.
And I have for a good number of years. And I belonged to a couple of Middle Eastern dance troupes that I really enjoy performing with. So I'm in a little transition with that, but I'm trying to find more time for that again in my life, because in the last year, my channeling just took off really big, and I made that my priority. So I'm going back to bringing some of that into my life again, but I absolutely love that.
That's amazing.
So I love to go watch. Yeah, I love to watch other dancers. Here in the Detroit area, we have a plethora of Middle Eastern dancers that in events that we can go to, and I enjoy doing it myself. So sometimes I go to workshops and events like that.
Nice. What a nice outlet. Yeah. Physical outlet for all the work you do.
It's a very grounded dance, and it's very earthly. Yeah. It's almost like a meditation in itself. Yeah. I love it.
Okay. And then lastly, what is the number one thing on your bucket list?
Travel. Travel.
Where are you going?
Yeah, oh gosh, I don't know yet, but I haven't really traveled a lot in this incarnation outside of the United States, and I'm getting ready to actually start traveling to lecture and channel outside of the Detroit area. So that's exciting for me, because I want to see some new places. I have an opportunity to go to London, which I've never been to, but I would love to see some of the ancient sites. And I don't really have a list in mind, but that's where I'm headed. As a matter of fact, before we got on this podcast, I was looking at flights and looking around at places. I just have this really strong desire in the next year to start traveling more. So that's my bucket list.
Wow, that's very exciting. I'm sure you're going to be drawn to, wherever you need to be.
Yeah.
That's going to serve you. So
yeah,
wow.
I would love to combine my travel with, I call it my work, but it's really not work to me. It's something that I love. So going out and connecting with people and channeling and being able to explore sounds brilliant. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great timeline.
Yeah.
Great timeline you're on.
Thank you.
If the listener wants to contact you to have a reading, I know you do channeled messages for people, and you also do public channelings. You have access to more in-depth material that you channel. What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah. Well, my website is MicheilaSheldan.com. So it's MicheilaSheldan.com. And you can check out my sessions there and all of my links to my social media. Connect with me on Facebook. I do live events here in the Detroit area once a month, but they're always filmed and they go up on YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel, but I also am very involved with the Flower of Life Center for Human Evolution here in Detroit. It's an organization that's focused on furthering human consciousness. And we have a YouTube channel called the Awaken Empowered Expo YouTube channel. All of my work is there, so you can connect with a lot of my channelings for free. In addition to that, I have channeled courses and things that I offer. So if you connect with me on Facebook, you can sign up for my email newsletter. I'm always emailing out where I'll be next and where my my material will be.
Perfect. All right. Well, to conclude today's interview, it's very generous of you to offer to do a channeled message for people. And this is, I thought, would be a nice opportunity for any listener who just has never listened to a channeled message and to see what their experience is after it. Like, how do you feel after listening to it and so forth. So I'm just going to let you take the reins and go for it.
Absolutely. And I'm connecting to the eighth dimensional Arcturian collective for your audience. So I'm very pleased and honored to bring them in. And what will happen is we'll connect with the collective that's most needed in the moment for those that are coming to the message. And the Arcturians are very focused on healing and self-healing. So I'm pleased to bring them forward. And as the Arcturian collective, we come in as a response to your vibratory calling. We are ones who are here to support the earth transition at a time in which you are merging together not only your soul's expression with your higher self, but also what the collective is calling for you to acknowledge as history that's running through you. We come not only to support you as a healer in this life, but also in your journey to self-healing and the complementary energy that supports that self-healing. Because what we know is, in order to embody the truth of who you are, you must first begin to access the parts of you that are most uncomfortable and work through those parts that creates the clearing space for more information to integrate. And we know that many of you have acknowledged that there is more to you than what you have been allowed to create in this life thus far. We see that the earth consciousness is shifting, and that many of you have come to the realization that you are here for a larger purpose, and that in the fulfillment of yourselves, that purpose will express. But you become very confused and overwhelmed, and oftentimes taken outside of yourself by this task in the same way that the third dimension pulled you outside of yourself with distractions and things that were calling you as a responsibility or a societal implication of who you were. And what we come to offer today is that, first, in the physical body, all of the information that you need for healing already exists. And if you take a breath on that and you imagine yourself holding within all of the answers that you need, what it creates is a more neutral frequency to enable you to see and experience what it is that you must walk through in those turbulent timelines, to come out on the other side, not necessarily letting go of them, but creating them into something that is different, something that is new. What we challenge you to look at in your lives are all of the things that you've created in a third dimensional energy, because they were not things that were meant to go to waste. In other words, you had the relationship and perhaps the relationship didn't go as planned, or you had a job that you chose in the world and you now believe that that job isn't equal to who you are. But what we know is that you've always been attuned with your record in some way. It's just that the way that you perceived it was through a density that didn't complement that inner truth. So there are already signs, there are already signals within what you've created to show you the things that are most important that you must rely on in the next phase of your reality. Next, we want to say that so many of you here, we see, are bringing timelines through that are repeats of things that you've already experienced, whether it be a repeat of a relationship or a repeat of a physical disease or ailment. And you may have thought, well, I healed this. Why am I experiencing this again? Or why is this person or disease coming back into my life when I closed that door? What's happened is that in the shift of timeline you just experienced, there's been a new phase of reality that required you to be responsible for your own non-physical source energy. In other words, often these timelines were healed in a very physical way. There was a door closed, or a relationship ended, or a disease was healed, perhaps in some way that was very physical as well. But there was something that was meant to be taken away by you as meaning that was not integrated. And so it's showing up now to actually remind you of that missing piece, that missing part, that truth of who you are. And so we offer to you that if you are experiencing one of these timelines in repeat, that you bring your highest awareness to them in a state of neutrality, meaning you don't get so tied up in the physicality of them and perhaps perceiving them as a block to your energy, but being the observer of how you interact within them and the new patterns that must be formed and the ways that you must perceive the experience you are having through love, through that new understanding of the self that you have, and through this new timeline that's now offered. Finally, when we go into your current vibration as a collective, we also see some struggle around the way that unity consciousness is being reformed. And when we speak of unity consciousness, we speak of all of you as a singular being equal to one another. You've experienced a new historic timeline that's arisen for you recently that is bringing back some of the same experiences that you've had in your singularity in a more collective state. And it is purposeful that you revisit those timelines as well, whether it be judgments or racial types of frequencies and energies, or war or poverty. These are all ways in which you've made yourselves very singular and separate. And although you've brought solutions to them through a different physical energy, those solutions are the same as the ones that you made in your singular experience. They did not take into consideration a more non-physical interpretation of energies, archetypal patterns, history, things that are running teachings, things that you were taught, things that you were told. This is all very deep inner child work, both at the soul level and the collective level. So we come in support of that. And what we want to offer to you is a very simple type of manifestation technique around these timelines. When you have something that has arisen that is very bothersome to you, in fact, it is something that is causing you to feel upset, sad, angry, fearful, all that is telling you is that you have changed so much that this timeline is no longer equal to who you are. It's a warning bell. It's an alert from the universe that there's something here that is no longer the truth of you, that you haven't yet healed. So when you take that type of a stance around anything that appears in your life, you become better positioned to be able to deal with it from a non-physical standpoint, because it doesn't feel so defeating. It doesn't feel so stifling. It almost becomes a challenge to you. It becomes something that you're here to actually integrate and use in your work. And what if we told you that there was no challenge in your life that didn't present itself unless it was somehow tied to the way that you are here to heal? So becoming the healer of your own experience and choosing freedom, choosing joy, choosing pure health, it really is the catalyst for how you make a difference, how that unity consciousness comes together. You see, in every decision that you make, you're serving the collective, but you get so caught up around the decisions. The decisions themselves don't matter. It's the energy behind the decision and how you integrate that, how you move through that with the least amount of suffering, with the most amount of joy, with the most amount of expansion that actually serves the collective. And this is where we see that you are heading. What we know is that in these times, as you go forward, communication with the self is a very valuable tool. And that manifestation process we talked about, it truly comes from that vibration. So we encourage you through your meditative practice or however you connect with yourself to become very quiet in the mind and to begin to have that conversation with what already lies within, what your desires truly are, not what others have told you they are, and not the way others are affected by those desires, but the way you're amplified through them, the way that they interconnect with all things, because we consider you the divine puzzle piece in the entire picture of the universe. And when you begin to see yourself that way, those decisions, those healings, they begin to make more sense. They become more purposeful. They're not here just to make you suffer. It's not karma that you must work off and suffer through because there was something that you did that was wrong. It truly is the embodiment of how this new dimension is served and how it is held here, and how that unity consciousness comes back together to support the earth, to support all beings, but also to support yourself. Because once the collective consciousness is reformed, you benefit from that as that puzzle piece. We've been very pleased to bring this transmission forward, and we offer great peace and love as you go forward with this understanding. We offer you the highest vibratory energy possible in all of you to incorporate and integrate this transmission. Many blessings.
Thank you for listening to WooWoo for the Skeptic. I would love to hear from you about the show, or if you know of someone you would like to see interviewed. And if you enjoyed this episode on channeling, please subscribe in your podcast app so that you never miss an episode. And now for your moment of woo. This quote comes from John A. Sanford, who said, "If we judge others, it is because we are judging something in ourselves of which we are unaware." Have a great week, everyone.